Fernando.
Thank you. Thanks, Fernando. So can you all hear me? All right. So I'm going to speak French for this brief introduction. So I'll leave you the time to our Portuguese and English speaking colleagues to choose the right language. So it's a pleasure to welcome you in this first training by the SAMM Project organized on labor migration. So after this brief introduction, I'm going to leave the floor to Gloria Moreno-Fontes, the technical head of this project, and then Mr. Pablo Valenzuela, who is the representative of the EU. So I'd like to leave the floor to Gloria immediately without much ado.
Tu es en mode silencieux.
So you are muted for the moment. All right.
Distinguished representative of the European Union, dear participants, welcome to this first e-course on labor migration governance in the SADC region, organized by the Southern Africa Migration Management Project, better known as SAMM. I would like to thank you for taking time to participate. I really hope that this course will be interesting and will provide you with useful information on the subject. Labor migration is one of the two components of the SAMM project. Overall, SAMM activities are implemented at the REX and country level, covering work in the 16 SADC countries in collaboration particularly with SADC, COMESA, and IOC's Secretariat, as well as governments, employers, workers, and civil society organizations. I would like to first of all mention that migration today is largely linked to the search for a job and better wages. Even if employment is not the primary driver, it usually features in the migration process at some point. Thus, the importance of involving world of work actors and labor market institutions in fostering fair and effective labor migration governance overall. All member states of the Southern Africa Development Community are involved on labor migration flows as countries of origin, transit, or destination, and often they play the three roles at the same time. In the past 10 years, a significant spike has been recorded with 3 million more migrants in the SADC region. According to UNDESA, Botswana, South Africa, and Tanzania are the most important countries of destination. It is also interesting to note that Seychelles and Mauritius have a significant high proportion of migrant workers compared to their local population, with a substantial number of them coming from Madagascar and other SADC neighboring countries, but others from outside the SADC region, notably South Asia. UNDESA data also indicates that there has been a significant increase in the migration of women, attaining a level of 47% in the SADC region. Member states such as Comoros, DRC, Malawi, Mozambique, and Tanzania reckon more women than men migrant workers. Progress has been made in fostering improved labor migration governance, notably at the SADC level, with the adoption of SADC's labor migration policy framework. In this context, the Ministers of Employment of the Southern Africa Development Community adopted a new SADC labor migration action plan for the period 2020-2025 during their meeting in March 2020. The Labor Migration Action Plan has three interrelated strategic objectives as follows. Strategic Objective 1, to strengthen labor migration policies and regulatory systems for better labor migration governance. Strategic Objective 2, to protect migrant workers' rights and improve advocacy and awareness of their contribution to development and regional integration. Strategic Objective 3, to enhance participation of migrant workers in socio-economic development processes in both receiving and sending countries. One of SAMM's key project priorities is to support the realization of SADC's Labor Migration Action Plan adopted through ministerial approval. Indeed, the SAMM project intends to contribute to its objective as a central and essential area of its work, particularly to areas such as improvement of social security portability for migrant workers, skills recognition, fair recruitment of migrant workers, and improvement of labor migration statistics. The ILO Centenary Declaration for the Future of Work, adopted by the International Labour Conference in 2019, calls on deepening and scaling up its work on international labor migration in response to constituents' needs and taking a leadership role in decent work in labor migration. Other key policy frameworks guiding ILO's labor migration work in the Southern Africa sub-region are the International Labor Conference 2017 ILC conclusions on fair and effective labor migration governance and its accompanying plan of action, as well as the 2019 Abidjan Declaration, Advancing Social Justice, Shaping the Future of Work for Africa, Realizing the Potential for a Future of Work with a Social Justice. Under the African Decent Work Agenda priorities, building on the human-centered approach to the future of work, member states are committed to strengthening the efficiency of the institutions of work to ensure adequate protection of all workers through promoting fair and effective labor migration governance. This course contributes to building capacity on the implementation of the labor migration component in the following continental policy frameworks: Africa's Agenda 2063, the 2014 AUC's Ouagadougou Plus 10 Declaration and Plan of Action on Employment, Poverty Eradication, and Inclusive Development in Africa, the revised Migration Policy Framework for Africa and Plan of Action 2018-2030, the AU Free Movement of Persons Protocol, and the AU's Common Position on the Global Compact on Safe, Orderly, and Regular Migration. Just to highlight a few, let me mention that the Ouagadougou Plus 10 Declaration aims at ensuring equal opportunities for all, particularly the vulnerable and marginalized groups, by facilitating effective and productive labor migration and free movement of workers within the continent to support the development agenda and promote regional economic integration and cooperation, including through the Continental Free Trade Area. It also recalls the necessity to enhance the capacity of the regional economic communities to monitor and evaluate productive employment and labor migration within the framework of regional and interregional cooperation. Let me also add that to realize the aspirations of the Ouagadougou Plus 10 Declaration, the AU adopted a 5-year priority program of action on employment, poverty eradication, and inclusive development, which includes key policy area number 5 on labor migration and regional economic integration, comprising the following outcomes. Outcome 1, increased ratification, domestication, and implementation of key international labor standards on labor migration. Outcome 2, improved use of databases on labor migrant skills, economic activities, education, working conditions, and social protection. Outcome 3, interregional and intra-regional skills and labor matching operational. Outcome 4, social security extended to migrant workers and their families through access and portability regimes compatible with international standards and good practice. Outcome 5, labor migration governance policy and administrative responsibilities effectively carried out by capable labor market institutions in RECs and member states. Outcome 6, tripartite policy consultation and coordination on labor migration operational at continental and regional levels. Dear distinguished participants, this course on labor migration governance will also provide you with increased knowledge in order to prepare you to contribute to the realization of the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda, particularly goals 8 and 10 that relate to international migration. It will include joint sessions with the IOM on the validation of the labor migration stock-taking report, covering work in all SADC countries. As I end this statement, I would like to mention that the ILO reiterates its commitment to support our tripartite constituents in achieving fair and effective labor migration governance and the protection of migrant workers and their family members. We look forward to very interesting discussions during the course deliberations. Thank you very much for your attention.
Merci beaucoup, Gloria.
Thank you. Thanks. Sorry, I had a little technical problem. Thanks for your keynote. So this means that now it's up to Mr. Pablo Valenzuela, EU representative. So thanks for taking the time for being with us this morning. So may I now leave the floor to you? Thanks, Miriam. It's a pleasure for me to be with you here this morning.
All the regional economic communities, other representatives and government officials, civil society from SADC member states, of course, other colleagues from EU delegations in the region, and Gloria and all other colleagues from the ILO and other UN agencies that are making this training this week possible. Good morning to all. I hope you all had a good weekend and that you're full of energy and ready to make the most out of this virtual training on labor migration that is starting today. On my side, I am very happy and honored to deliver some brief opening remarks on behalf of the European Union. Ladies and gentlemen, at the end of 2019, the European Union secured 20 million euros for the Southern African Migration Management Project, that we also are getting to know in short as SAMM. The project is being implemented by 4 UN agencies, namely the ILO, IOM, UNHCR, and UNODC. And at that time, at the end of 2019, no one would have ever imagined the difficulties that we would have gone through due to COVID-19 pandemic. As we look back at 2020, I am sure we would all agree that it has been a very unusual year, to say the least. Unfortunately, social distancing, teleworking, lockdowns, and school closures have become the new normal. This new normal has affected our social and work patterns, but luckily, most of us have managed to pull through despite the challenges. However, for many others, the COVID-19 pandemic has had a huge impact. I think it's worth reminding that since the topic of the course is labor migration, it is fair today to think in particular in the millions of migrants and labor migrants throughout the globe who have seen their already vulnerable situation worsen due to the pandemic. Ladies and gentlemen, as indicated in Target 10.7 of Agenda 2030, to which the EU strongly adheres, migration and mobility should be about orderly, safe, regular, and responsible migration and mobility of people, and made effective through the implementation of planned and well-managed migration policies. Mobility of people is part of European values and projects, and we recognize the benefit of mobility and migration for development. The EU has been supporting mobility in Africa, both at continental and regional levels, for quite some time. For example, we have been supporting the extension of social protection to migrant workers, including those in the formal economy and their families, through strengthening the capacities of selected regional economic communities and the African Union Commission. Another example, linked to the ILO general principles and operational guidelines for fair recruitment, is the EU support to the Madagascar-Lebanon migration corridor, reducing abusive practices and violations of human and labor rights during the recruitment process, and maximizing the protection of migrant workers and their contribution to development. And of course, through the project that funds today's training, which is the Southern African Migration Management Project, that will be running until 2024 and should contribute to improving the policy environment for labor migration across the region and improve access to legal and efficient means of labor mobility. Ladies and gentlemen, the EU has always followed and promoted a cooperative and multilateral approach in partnership with countries and regions, as well as with international organizations, especially the UN. Migration is no exception. Working together is the best way to save lives and protect the human rights of migrants. The new Pact of Migration and Asylum of September 2020 continues, consolidates, and reinforces this approach. The EU-funded Southern African Migration Management Program is a clear example of joint efforts to improve migration management in Southern African and the Indian Ocean regions. It brings together 4 UN agencies, 3 RECs, namely COMESA, IOC, and SADC, and the European Union in collaboration with the 16 SADC countries. Finally, and to conclude, I am happy that ILO has managed to convene this course as part of the activities under the SAMM Project, and I'd like to thank all the people that have worked to make this training possible. I hope all the participants benefit from the course this week, and that in the future, you as participants will continue engaged and committed towards the improvement of labor migration in the SADC region. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Obrigado. And as we like to say here in Botswana, ke ale boga, pula.
Merci, monsieur. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Mr. Valenzuela. It's a pleasure to hear from you, and thanks for being virtually with us for this opening remarks. It is interesting to see that there are 70 people now connected, but we are expecting some more 30 or 40. So potentially we have a group of more than 100 participants. So this shows the huge effort we've done so far for the organization of this course, because the whole team of you was involved, because it's thanks to them that we can be here. So Gloria, may I leave the floor to you again, just to introduce yourself in a more informal way to our participants, and then I'll go on with the rest of your team. So Gloria, you have the floor.
Oui, bonjour tout le monde. Je suis Gloria Moreno-Fontes.
So, good morning. My name is Gloria Moreno-Fontes. I am the technical head of SAMM Project. As it was said before, SAMM shows an effort of uniting and working together for UNHCR, IOM, UNDC, and the ILO. So 4 agencies striving together in order to work with the support, the funding support of European Union, which I'd like to thank warmly here. So thanks, Pablo, for the participation of the EU. So may I now leave the floor to my team very quickly. John Beaulieu, are you here? Maybe his... Yes.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Just a brief note, it's great to see a lot of people here. Look forward to a wonderful week. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Let me give the floor now to Harita Cunha.
Yes, hello everyone, good morning. Nice to be part of this capacity building as well. So I'm Harita Cunha, the National Project Coordinator for the ILO in Mauritius, and I'm the ILO focal point as well here, and the Migration Coordinator for the at the level of the Indian Ocean Commission. So all the countries, Comoros, Seychelles, Mauritius, and Madagascar, here I am, Harita. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you, Harita. I would like to give the floor to Matilda Dalkist, who's providing us also support. Matilda, are you there? If not, I give the floor to Lucia Rodriguez. Introduce herself, Lucia.
Bon dia, good morning, everyone. My name is Lucia Rodriguez, and I'm the Finance and Administration Officer on the SAMM Project. I'm very excited to be here today.
Makungu Paloyi, please.
Morning, everyone. Makungu Paloyi from the SAMM Project, responsible for communications. I'm looking forward to the workshop and everything that will unfold for the rest of the week. Thanks, Gloria.
Okay, thank you very much, Makungu. Sheila, please, Goveni.
Thank you, Gloria. Good morning, everyone. I'm Sheila Goveni. I'm the admin for the SAMM Project. Happy to be here and happy to see everybody finally managed to connect. Yes, I hope we're gonna have a wonderful time in this training. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, over to you, Miriam. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gloria. Let me now introduce the team from the ITCILO side. I will maybe start by myself very briefly. My name is Miriam Boudraa. I'm a senior program officer at the International Training Center, where I am I'm responsible of the labor migration portfolio. Together with me, I have the chance on this activity to work with Fernando and Hisham. I will maybe give first the floor to Fernando, that you will see throughout the week, because he will be the main facilitator of this training. Fernando, over to you.
Bom dia a todos. Good morning, everyone. I'll try to speak a little bit of Portuguese. Now, the idea is, in fact, to have this kind of a balance between the different languages. So I'll speak the different languages, but I will try to speak as much Portuguese as possible to keep up this balance. It's a great pleasure for me to be with you today. I will try to help, so I'll be the facilitator throughout this week, along with Hisham. And we are at your disposal. Please feel free to ask any questions, any doubts that you may require from us. And through this interface, we can see not only the video part, the Zoom video part, but we'll also have our chat box. So feel free, use it and ask your question. And actually the chat box will be the main means of communication. So I'm going to encourage you to use it as much as possible. Now, very quickly, I'd like to introduce then this chat. Introduce yourselves with your name, the country of origin, your areas of interest, so that everybody else can have a global vision of who we are here in this training session. Again, throughout this week, we will have the possibility to deepen our questions and different fields, and using this platform. We will speak about this later on as well. But again, it's a great pleasure to be with you today. And I repeat, do not hesitate to ask your questions. We are here to help you and also to encourage you to ask your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Fernando. So that's good. That's why I'm speaking French as much as possible, because most of the speakers will be speaking English. So this way we're trying to go back to a language balance as much as possible. So last but not least, here we have Hisham. So you realize that you cannot do without him very, very soon, because it's the person who will be most in contact with you during the week. So you're going to remember him and his email address. Don't worry. So Hisham, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Miriam. My name is effectively, yes, Hisham Abdurrahman, Muhammad Abdurrahman, Fatlallah, Rahmatullah, Abdullah. But for convenience sake, I think everybody can call me Hisham. I'm a course coordinator, a course coordinator at the ITCILO, and I'll be supporting you throughout this activity, essentially through Zoom, supporting you on the eCampus, and much like Fernando, we're going to be one of the two faces that you're going to hate by the end of the webinars. You're going to see us every day, but it's going to be our pleasure in any case to be here with you. Allow me, Miriam, to take 5 minutes of your time to walk the participants through the platform which you're going to be using throughout this week, which is the repository where you will find all the information, all the appointments, the chat box, the forum that Fernando was referring to. So it's the end all be all for this course, and even beyond the life of the course is where you'll be able to access, find all the documents that you received here. You'll be receiving throughout the week, and you'll have access to this for the next years to come. So it will be a way for you to have all the documents at your fingertips in the 3 languages. So let me share my screen here briefly, Miriam.
Oui, et Hicham, peut-être le temps que tu partages ton écran.
Yes, okay. So maybe while you share your screen, may I just make a clarification for our participants? During the day, you're going to receive an email from Hicham with the credentials for accessing the platform. So the platform has been mentioned many times so far in the conception note, especially because it is one of the main tools we're going to use during the course. But because you haven't seen it yet, now we show you how to navigate it, and then in the afternoon you're going to receive your access. There you will find all the presentations, all the recordings, and many didactic materials, footages, recordings of speakers, of expert speakers made during the week. So, and the recording of each day we spend together. So, as Fernando said it, we created a discussion forum on the platform for you to further exchange on the topics of our training, not only among you participants, but also with all the other experts that attended it. So check your email today to see whether you received the credential, and if you won't, please feel free to contact us. Hicham, you have the floor.
Thank you, Miriam. Yes, that is correct. You'll be receiving the credentials this afternoon, along with videos explaining how to access it and also how to navigate it. And if you're not able to still do that, we will be here to support you at any time. Just send us an email at migration@itcilo.org. We'll write that on the chat box, but you will also be receiving it via email, but you have already received several of them. So essentially what's going to happen is once you receive the credentials, you go into ecampus.itcilo.org. You enter here, you press enter. And once you've already entered your username and password, you log in and you'll get to an area which we call the dashboard. In the dashboard, for those of you who are veterans of ITCILO courses, you'll see the list of courses that you've attended, participated, or worked on. And you will see this is the course, Labor Migration Governance in the SADC region. And depending on the language that you select up here, you will see different options, of course. So you connect to the course, and this is what you're going to see as a participant. You'll be able to see essentially for now these three different let's call them sections. One is the useful information section, where you can find information about the course in a glimpse. I'm not going to go into all of these right now, it take too much time. Here you will be able to find video tutorials on how to navigate the eCampus in the three languages. So you have them in English, French, and Portuguese. When you click in here, you'll be able to see the bios and meet the team from the SAMM team, the ITCILO team, essentially everybody that's supporting you. Also, you'll be able to contact them and find their emails. What was mentioned before from Fernando and Miriam are these two areas, which is the notice board, which is where we'll be posting some information for you to some valuable information, some valuable documents to read, some valuable added material that is to supplement the course. This is where you'll be able to find it, and you can add a discussion topic pertaining to that argument. For example, Miriam might ask you about what is the most challenging aspect of labor migration in your country, and this is where you'll be able to add and comment to that. But that's in terms of questions and discussions of the course itself. In terms of the virtual coffee, this is a space just for the participants where you can literally propose any topic you wish to discuss with your peers. And even the course organizers are going to jump in the discussion. So if you have any question that you feel is relevant and important enough for all the participants to partake and discuss, maybe even something, an aspect related to your job that you think should be explored and should be shared with everybody, this is where you do it, in the virtual cafe. So this is virtually, you can have a coffee with your colleagues and discuss about everything, labor migration related, of course. So moving on to the second section, which is the welcome section. This is where you will find the welcome video by Gloria Moreno-Fontes. She will welcome you to the course. And we will also ask you to update your profile. This way, much like what Fernando was saying, which you can talk about a bit about yourself. Once you update your profile, everybody knows a bit more about you, and we can also use this information to sort of, along with the pre-course survey, which tells us about your preferences, and along with your the testing your knowledge. All these three will help us better guide the course to your needs, tailor it to fit your needs, and to make it a better experience for all. These two are going to be very important for us. The pre-course survey, they will be opened in the afternoon once you receive the credentials. And the testing your knowledge, this is testing your general knowledge on labor migration. And this one has to do with your preferences in terms of your learning needs and preferences. So for now, I think I can give back. And before we give back to Miriam, obviously, when we get into the meat of the course, and this is where you'll find the introductory module. This is where you'll find the readings for this first day, so to speak. But the more material we have, the more you keep seeing it, and we'll try to post it as fast as possible in the different languages. So keep checking the eCampus. We will send you notifications with the tasks that would need to be completed. And as we go further along the course, you'll see more topics will pop up and more information will be there for you to access, and also more activities for you to undertake. Miriam, I think for now I've confused them enough. The floor is back to you.
Merci beaucoup, Hicham.
Thanks, Hicham. Could you please continue sharing your screen, because as you said, it's a huge bulk of information, but don't worry, because the platform is very user-friendly, so you have an easy time with it. So as I said before, all the material will be posted on the eCampus, so you won't be receiving any presentation, any document through your email. Everything will be here. Second and very important point, to validate your information and to obtain your certificate of completion and participation, you will have to complete tests and assignments. So in order to obtain the certificate, you will need to be connected and work on the platform, because at the end of each week, you have quizzes to complete. So starting from tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, as you received your credentials, we're going to spend 5 more minutes at the beginning of that session to make a very quick clarification over the things that may not be clear. Then we're going to integrate a footage explaining how you can just enter the platform. So don't worry, because everything will be explained over and over again. So thanks, Hicham. Looking at the time, we are running a little bit, but not too much. So let me just very quickly introduce you the agenda of this week we're going to spend together. Again, you will find it on the platform, but for the moment, I'm going to share my screen and show you directly. Okay? All right, Isham, please, can you confirm you can see my screen? Just nod if you can. Okay. Thanks a lot. So this is the keynote, and at page 6, you find our agenda. So the idea, the basic idea of this training course is to allow you to become familiar with the specific ILO interventions concerning migration. So you're gonna have different sessions, 7 sessions, that are crucial for the ILO whenever dealing with migration issues. First and foremost, will be given in some minutes, and we'll be dealing with the ILO's International Labour Standards. After the break, you can see here, we'll be speaking about fair recruitment. Tomorrow, we're going to work on bilateral agreement for labor migration and social protection and extension of social protection to labor migrants. Just one note on the keynote you received. So first session on ILS and second on social protection. So they will be swapped. So don't worry, because the sessions are the same, but they're just swapped. Then on Wednesday, we're going to work on the regional framework for RECs and recognition of competence and skills. The first session will be this one, and the second will be on statistics concerning labor migration. On Thursday, we're going to work on gender sensitive policies and strategies and how to deal with these issues concerning labor migration. And then the second session on Thursday and this first on Friday will be focused on group discussion about validation of on the report on labor migration in Africa and in Southern Africa in particular. So maybe Gloria will be given some further information on this report. So as I said, we're going to deal with it on Thursday and Friday first session. Then the second session on Friday will be just a summary of all the sessions we'll have had this week. So this is a sort of hybrid training course because, of course, you will have front lessons, online front lessons, but there will be many things posted on the platform, and for your convenience, all the sessions will be recorded and posted on the platform. So you have the possibility to complete your assignments on the platform, but you have also the possibility to discuss the lessons learned. So every day we'll be connected at Pretoria time, 9 to 10:30, and from 11 to 12:30. And every session will have a 30 minutes break. Very important, as it was said before, all the sessions will be recorded. So if ever you cannot participate to the session directly, you can just connect to the platform and find the recordings at the end of every day in the 3 languages. So you'll be able to follow your session in whichever language you prefer and the time you prefer. But just be careful, as we said before, the certificate of participation depends on the completion of the tests and quizzes. So the tests and quizzes will be based on the direct session and live session. So if, again, you cannot follow and you cannot attend the session live, don't forget to watch the recording in order to be able and have all the information needed to complete the end of the week test that will allow you to obtain the certificate of participation. So, Fernando and Isham, is there any burning question posted in the chat? So, I think there aren't any. So it's already 9:30 in Praetorian and 8:30 in Turin. So without much ado, can we get into the nitty-gritty with our first session dealing with international labor standards and in particular ILO conventions about the protection of labor migrants. So I'd like you to connect to this website. So please just click on the link I have just posted on the chat box. So I'm going to share my screen again, but please click on the link and connect to the same site. Hisham, can you nod? Can you confirm you see my screen? Okay. All right, so here you see some questions that are asked to you just as an icebreaker. So you can connect either through your smartphone, so you just go on slido.com and this is your password, hashtag SAMM 2021, or you can just click on the link I have just posted on the chat, as I said before, and you can get connected through the device you're using to follow this session. So maybe Isham, could you copy it again on the chat?
Alors, on va tester d'abord pour voir.
Right. So let's make a quick test to see if everything works well. So nothing to do with the session topic, but just to see if we are all connected and everything works. So how are you? So remember, the bigger the word, the higher the number of persons who entered that word. So for the moment, everything is fine, excited, very well, so great. So it's good to read positive comments. Right. So everything clear for the mechanisms of Slido. All right. So let's switch to the next question. So again, to start knowing something more about each other, would you like to post the country or city you come from? So we see a big share of you comes from Madagascar, Mauritius, colleagues from South Africa, Lesotho, Zimbabwe too. We have Seychelles represented also here. Italy. Thanks, Hisham. All right, let's wait some more seconds to let everybody enter the country. Mozambique too, and DRC. So, of course, if you have any issues in using Slido, you can always use the chat box to answer. So, according to what I can see in the screen, the biggest delegation here comes from Madagascar and South Africa. And ranking after them, it's Mauritius and Lesotho. We have also Malawi, I can see from the chat box. So, next question. So let's have a look at the gender balance. Whether we have it or not, we don't know. For the moment, we haven't, because apparently we have more women than men attending the session. Looking at the participants list, actually, I could see gender balance is rather dear, although we have more women answering the questions. And gender is one of the main topics when we deal with labor migration governance. So the decision makers and those who are in charge of developing such policies need to be very mindful of gender and its core importance for the development of such policies. So again, for the moment, we have an imbalance because we have more women, but I'm sure that we are rather balanced, and let's see whether the next days will be like that or not. Next question. Are you working for?
Vous avez ministère du Travail, employeur, travail.
Okay, we have Minister of Labor, Trade Union, International Regional Organization, NGOs and employers organizations too. For the moment, we see that public institutions other than the Ministry of Labor are mostly represented. And we can also see that there is a good representation of trade unions and employers' organizations. So we see a miscellaneous group, and it's important also to know where you work and for which institution you work for, because of the diversity of priorities that may be expressed by each of you. So, in order to have a better insight into your own experience on migration issues, this is the right question. Since how many years have you been working on migration issues? So we see that 73% of you is between 0 and 5. So it's almost new topic, so to say. It's also important to let us know whether some topics should be given a better insight or more space and time. So because of the profile of all of you, may I advise that you take the time to watch the introduction module because it is aimed at giving you a comprehensive view of the questions included in labor governance. So this will help you understand the challenges connected with labor migration governance, not only at a national, but also at an international level. So this is not really directly connected to migration issues, but please let us know in only one word, how would you describe yourself? Somebody says passionate, and passion is very important. So we hope we will have passionate and energetic participants to liven our discussions. Right. So we have many dynamic and eager people. So these are the two biggest words you use to describe yourself. So I hope you're not forget that description you made of yourself through the week. So we can also see committed or positive attitude, energetic, motivated. So here are the three main characteristics of you, so dynamic, motivated, and eager. So may I ask Isham to take a picture of this screen so that we can use it across the training. So it's encouraging to see these attitudes to see that we are working with a dynamic, motivated, and eager group of persons. All right. So now let's go back to the trails. So what do you think is the most important challenge or challenges regarding the governance of labor migration in your own national or regional context? So really think of the closest challenges of you. So the coherence between migration and employment policies, or maybe the regional and international cooperation and harmonization of labor migration policies, the lack of data, the consultation of the different actors involved at national level, and dialogue and social dialogue in particular. The adoption of a right-based approach for labor migration, and the implementation of coordination systems. So these are just some of the main challenges connected to labor migration governance. There will be more, and you will be exposed to them across to the week: fair recruitment, extension of social protection to labor migrants, recognition of skills and competencies at bilateral and regional level. So for the moment,
c'est également tout l'objectif du...
And I think you touched the main issue of our course. For the moment, I can see that the regional and international cooperation and harmonization of labor migration policies and the coherence between migration and employment policies are ranking first. And I have to say that this will touch and will be connected to the recognition of skills and also the extension and access to social protection for labor migrants. So all the topics that will be covered this week try to answer and try to find sort of solution, so to say, to these challenges. So next question, on a scale from 1 to 10, and we'll be dealing at national level this time. How do you think your labor migration policy is coherent with your employment policy? So, all right. So far, we have an average of 5, an average score of 5. So this speaks about a certain level of coherence, but also 4 is rather high. So for the moment, we have an average score of 4.9.
Can somebody help me with the interpretation? I'm getting Portuguese or French or what, I don't know. May somebody switch me to English language? I'm moving the cursor on the bottom and I don't see anything.
You don't see interpretation?
Mute the CV.
You should see at the bottom of it. I assume you're looking for English, right?
I don't see interpretation. Yes, I'm looking for English. On my left, I see mute, I see an arrow up, I see video camera, I see participants, I share screen, chat,
we don't hear you
more,
well.
and leave the meeting.
Sorry, do you see the three buttons that says
Well,
more?
the
You see the three buttons that
short
says
of
more?
it,
Do it. Can you please?
yes, that's more.
Can you please just
Yes.
leave the meeting and come back again, connect and disconnect, and somehow that may fix it. In any case, if you're using the laptop version,
All right,
please
thank
just download it. We'll see from there. And if the issue persists, please write on the chat, and we'll take it from there.
Okay.
Please proceed, Miriam.
Thank you. Alors je vais.
All right.
I will switch in English if you don't mind, just for the last questions. So let's move now to questions that are particularly related to rights-based approach to labor migration, and also to the need to have a particular instrument protecting migrant workers. So if you're looking at my question, why should we adopt a right-based approach to labor migration? So there is no right and wrong answer to the question, but it would be interesting to know from you, why do you think, if you have to pick one, which would be the reason? So is it because human beings, as men and women migrant workers and their family members, are at the heart of international labor migration? So that is one of the reasons. Because we can also agree that, in a way, the international labor standard discussed and agreed by government, workers, and employer organization, who, together with migrant workers, are the stakeholders in the world of work, and that labor migration is an issue of the world of work. Because international minimum standard ground and guide for formulation of labor migration policy grounds the labor migration policy at national and regional level. And also because international labor migration should not be immune from application of rule of law. So that will be interesting to know as well from your side. What do you think we should be the importance related to right-based approach to labor migration? What we see so far from your answer, and it's quite interesting, is indeed because at the heart of international labor migration, they are men and women workers and their family who are human beings, and therefore labor migration should be seen as well as migrant workers should be seen as well as rights holders, and therefore should benefit to specific rights as workers, but before others as well as human beings. And indeed, and you see the second answer, which has been provided more, is because labor migration is labor issue, if I might put it in that way, or labor concern. In that specific context, we should also therefore have international labor standard, and this labor international standard need to be discussed and agree among the ILO tripartite constituents, meaning government, workers, and employers organizations.
de l'OIT, les gouvernements, les travailleurs,
So that, I would say, are the two main answers provided by you. And now let's move maybe to why do you think, and here as well, there is no right and wrong answer. Why do you think migrant workers need specific protection? And you can rank the option. So is it because they are non-citizens, and by such they rarely benefit from full equal treatment. They are often in low-skilled precarious employment. They are, and we see that after break as well, and that in particularly low-skilled migrant workers at greater risk of abusive recruitment practices. There is a kind of intersectional form of discrimination, because we see that you can accumulate, if I might say it, different kind of discrimination, being a migrant workers, being a women migrant workers, and I would even add on top being an irregular migrant worker. So there are different kind of discrimination existing that can, in a way, accumulate to each other. And then also because what we see is that very often migrant workers are working in what we call low-skilled precarious employment, and therefore by such, because of the employment, might need also a specific protection, because most likely they are exposed to what we call usually the 3D jobs, meaning dangerous, dirty, and degrading. So you rank, so if we're looking a bit to the ranking, what we see is that for the time being, you put the questions of, it's very interesting, you put in the questions of recruitment as the main reason why they do need protection, because more exposed to abusive recruitment practices. And if I'm just taking the three first, we see also the intersectional forms of discrimination. And we will come back to that with Gloria's session on gender as well. And the risk also of exploitation, and particularly when in an irregular situation. So that I would say are the three main reasons you think migrant workers need to have access to some specific protection. I will just leave it 1 minute. Okay. And let me move to what would be my last questions before I move to my presentation. So here there is a right and wrong answer. So according to you, true or false, in principle, international labor standards cover all workers irrespective of nationality and immigration status, unless otherwise stated. Do you think this statement is true or this statement is false? So pay attention to the way the statement is formulated. It's all workers irrespective of nationality and immigration status, meaning as well migrant workers in an irregular status. So a large majority of you say this is true. For the time being, 79% saying it's true. So I will let you 1 additional minute to answer to the question. And so let's see the correct answer. And indeed, the correct answer is true. It is true that in principle, international labor standard cover all workers, irrespective of nationality and immigration status, unless otherwise stated. So let me stop sharing my screen and let me now move to my presentation, where you will see that some of the elements highlighted in the Slido are also in my presentation. We just need 1 second. Isham, do you see my screen?
Yes, not
okay,
in
I will try to
full,
put,
but yes.
Okay, I will try to put the full screen mode.
Yes, now it's full screen.
Okay. So within the presentation, je vais repasser en français.
All right. So I'll switch back to French. So don't worry, because you can follow my English slides and I'll be speaking French. So I'd like to use the minutes available for this first part to cover the topic we were speaking about before. Why do migrant workers need special protection? So that was also mentioned partially in Slido questionnaire. Then we're going to touch rights-based approach to labor migration, the ILO mandate and international labor standards, and the role that the latter can play in labor migrant governance, then the applicable international labor standards and specific standards on migrant workers. And I think we're going to stop here, at least for this morning. I hope I can have time to mention the ILO supervisory system and the compliance with ILS, and then complementary ILO frameworks and guidance with the related international frameworks so that we can protect the labor migrants' rights. I think you may have heard about the SDGs and the Global Compact on migration. This shouldn't be new to you. So, as mentioned in Slido questionnaires, we very often see how difficult it is for non-nationals to have access to fully fair and equal treatment as compared to nationals. In addition, it is very difficult to assess whether non-nationals, and in particular labor migrants, are treated equally and have equal access to rights. This deals with labor markets, of course, and its mechanisms. Usually, labor migrants are the first victims, so to say, of less equal conditions, if I can say so, or at least less favorable conditions as nationals. They are often treated as scapegoats whenever issues may arise about unemployment in a country, for example, or they may be exposed to less protected or more precarious working conditions. So apart from general discrimination suffered from labor migrants, when we speak about less qualified labor migrants, we usually deal with specific sectors, mining sector, agricultural sector, construction sectors, and even manufacturing work and domestic work. This is more for women, while the first sectors I mentioned were more dealing with men. We need to understand the level of risk in every sector, not only about working conditions, but in general for these workers. This is why they need protection, because they are particularly exposed to risk. As it was greatly underlined, and as it will be pointed out clearly after the break, low qualified migrant workers are at higher risk of exploitation and forced labor, starting from the recruitment phase. My colleagues will give you some statistical data on abusive recruitment, and in particular concerning recruitment fees that are dumped on the migrants across the whole recruitment procedure. So the fact that migrant workers can be discriminated against in different ways should ring our bells of migrant experts. So remember that they are 50% women and at least a little less than half the whole migrants in Africa. So the fact of being a woman and being a migrant worker implies a higher level of discrimination. So Gloria will set that in further details. However, when we speak about qualified women migrants, the risk of de-skilling is higher than other categories, because they are discriminated against as
So, Miriam, can you please unmute yourself? I had to mute everybody.
Oui, cette double discrimination, en fait, cette discrimination, pardon, a tendance à se cumuler l'une à l'autre par différentes couches. Et on pourrait même rajouter aussi une autre possibilité, une autre discrimination, notamment.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now? I think you can. So, as I said, this is a multi-layered discrimination, and there may be further layers because of the starting status of the migrant worker that can be irregular.
Hicham, est-ce que tu m'entends?
All right, Hicham, can you hear me?
Est-ce que tu m'entends, Hicham? Oui. Alors, j'ai juste un
Yes.
petit souci, du coup, maintenant, de passer au prochain.
All right.
Slide. Alors, juste un instant, je vais.
So just
Désolée pour cela.
one moment.
Pardon. Hicham, est-ce que tu vois mon écran?
All right, Hicham, you can see my screen, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Est-ce que c'est bon?
Oui.
D'accord. Voilà, désolée pour ce petit contretemps. Alors, donc, suite à avoir vu la raison pour laquelle...
So, now we know why migrant workers really need...
Voilà, revenons à cette question du coup. Pourquoi une approche basée sur les droits?
Muito bem, então uma abordagem baseada também com os
based approach. And what is it? Well, it is actually focusing on migrants when dealing with labor migration governance, because migrants are workers and workers are human beings, whether they are men or women, it doesn't matter. And so as such, they are entitled to a certain number of rights. So the fact of being labor migrants shouldn't exclude them from enjoying these rights. That's why we need a rights-based approach. And this means that whenever figuring out a set of
quer seja a nível nacional ou regional,
national and international or regional level, this should be guided by a rights-based approach according to international standards. There are many, mainly the 1948 Declaration of Human Rights and for migrant workers too, but also the ILO conventions concerning labor migration. So within the framework of the ILO, we want these ILO standards to be discussed and implemented not only by governments, but also by trade unions and employers associations all together. So these are all the social partners deciding over the labor standards, and in particular on international labor standards protecting labor migrants and labor migration in general. So those conventions were not only adopted by governments, but by governments after discussing with employers and workers associations, and not only by origin countries and their constituents, but also by destination countries. And that's so crucial, because we need to understand that these conventions are the result of a consensus. So we could observe that since the ILO was constituted in 1919, the issues of protection and non-discrimination of labor migrants have been at the very core of our discussion. So it's more than 1 century we've been dealing with it, and we've been promoting non-discrimination and protection of labor migrants. In particular, you can see here in the principle of social justice protecting all, including so workers when employed in countries other than their own. So back 100 years ago, we as ILO were thinking of the protection of workers coming from other countries. So this is part of the ILO constitutions, part of its main values, of its core values. And the different declarations or conventions and international labor standards, So the Declaration of Fundamental Principles of Rights and Works speaks about it, but then also the Declaration of Social Justice for Fair Globalization and the Centenary Declaration on the Future of Work. So each and every time, at each and every fundamental step of our story, we have confirmed our commitment to the protection of labor migrants. So the questioners you answered before included one topic, international labor standards. So please remember that all international labor standards cover all workers, irrespective of nationality and immigration status, unless otherwise stated. So this means that if nothing different is stated in the convention, all ILO conventions, all ILS, so all international labor standards, so including recommendations, are applied and cover all workers, so including migrant workers, whether they are legal or illegal. So this doesn't mean that the states lose the control over access to their territory and labor market. However, this means that whenever migrants are present in a country, there are standards to be applied for them and on the labor market to protect them. So as we pointed out that the ILS are applied to all the labor migrants, we see which ones in particular. So all ILO Fundamental Rights Conventions, even if they're not ratified by the ILO members, because the fact of belonging to ILO implies implicit acceptance of these fundamental rights conventions. So no need for ratifications for these principles to be complied with by the member states. So here you see a list, and reading through this list, you will find the 4 pillars, so freedom of association and protection of the right to organize, and right to organize and collective bargaining, so this is the first pillar of the ILO. Second pillar, the abolition of forced labor. Third pillar, minimum age convention, so the elimination of worst forms of child labor. And then fourth pillar, equal remuneration, equality of treatment, and elimination of discrimination on the workplace. So as we read through this list and we find the 4 pillars of the ILO mentioned there, we can easily realize that most of the times migrant laborers are deprived of these rights. In particular, if we look at forced labor or the possibility to be represented by a trade union, thanks Gloria, collective bargaining, because they are mainly excluded from these rights. So these conventions are fundamental to protect migrants' rights. And mentioning my previous slide, you know that this should be applied to them. So remember that, and very often they are used to protect migrants' rights. Looking at Convention 29, based on this convention, the Committee of Experts for the application of standards and recommendation could mention the lack of protection of migrant workers in Qatar and a call for a change in its legislation. So they are not focused on migrant workers. This convention is focused on all workers. However, whenever we need to protect migrant workers' rights, we need to be particularly attentive and we're mindful of these core conventions because they can be a tool to protect them. And in general, talking about governance standards, we have Convention 81 on labor inspection, for example, and these too can be applied, should be applied, and must be applied to migrant workers. As a matter of fact, labor inspectors are the ones who could identify migrants who are in an irregular conditions. So of course they cannot go on a hunt for irregular migrants in the companies. However, because there's a risk of losing the trust of workers in the labor inspection institution, labor inspectors could play a similar role. So they really need to enter into a trust relationship with the migrant workers to understand whether their rights are being denied to them or at the workplace. All right, Fernando Isham, is there any question in the chat box for the moment? So if ever you have questions, please don't hesitate to post them on the chat box. No, not yet. No technical questions for the moment. So if I may, I will go on for 10 more minutes before closing my session. So if I have this problem again, please can you share your own screen, so in the interest of time.
Alors, je vais peut-être essayer de
All right. I think you can read anyway like that, so I may not put it on full screen because I think that's the mode that is creating some problems for me. Again, going on the applicable international labor standards. So I'm not entering into the details of each convention. This is just to mention some general conventions, so not specifically aimed at migration, or labor migrants, but Convention 181 on private employment agencies. This deals with migrant workers too, also equality of treatment on Social Security Convention. So these are all crucial because they allowed to revive the need for ratification of international labor standards protecting migrants. And then the Convention concerning domestic workers, Convention 189, adopted in 2011. This has been crucial for the protection of migrant workers, as well as the protection of women migrants, because most of domestic workers are women. So very quickly, some more conventions. Sorry, I can hear the Portuguese.
Venons-en finalement au fait des instruments qui existent au niveau de l'OIT.
Sorry, I have
spécifiquement pour les travailleurs migrants. Il existe deux instruments, deux
So there are two conventions and two recommendations. Convention 97, adopted in 1949. So, sorry, I hear the Portuguese. Can you do something for that, please? I cannot translate. I hear the Portuguese.
Nous sommes compte en fait que principalement les pays européens.
I'm sorry, but the English cannot be translated because I can hear both in French and Portuguese. Can you stop, Miriam, please?
Miriam, can we have you pause for a second? We're having an overlap of languages.
Okay.
Portuguese is overlapping with English. Can the Portuguese interpreters please check which language they're interpreting on?
I'm interpreting in Portuguese, but I think that I was introduced as a participant, not as an interpreter. That's why I was. I can see here that I cannot choose my language, as if I were or a participant or something else, but not an interpreter.
O que está acontecendo é que a sua interpretação ela está entrando junto com a língua original.
Mas é por isso, porque eu acho que me inseriram não como intérprete. Não tem como colocar como intérprete.
Nós precisamos fazer isso. Tinha outro intérprete falando em português também, né?
You are in interpretation mode, otherwise you would not be able to do this right now.
No, I'm not. I think I'm not in interpretation mode right now.
Let me do it now again.
Please.
Do it now again, and I'll add you again. Actually, I see that you have been removed somehow. You probably connected and disconnected. So let me add you again.
Thank you.
Isham, shall I wait for a while?
Just give me 1 minute.
Yes, please.
Sure.
Beatriz, confirm that you're under Beatriz Borges.
Yes.
Okay. Please confirm now. You should be in now.
Now it's okay. English?
Okay. Miriam, I think you can proceed now. It should be solved. Claudia, please let me know in text if it's not solved. I mean, Barbara, in text if it's not solved. Please continue, Miriam.
Ok. Je continue en français.
All right. I go on in French. So, let me just go back to what I was saying. So there are two specific instruments on labor migration and protection of migrant workers. So it's Convention 97 and Convention 143. So They are accompanied with their own recommendations, Recommendation 86 for Convention 97 and Recommendation 151 for Convention 143. So let's start with the first one, Convention 97. So look at the date it was adopted, 1949. It was adopted in the aftermath of Second World War. And if you think of that period, you can easily understand how the states and governments were eager to ensure migration and movement from one country to the other. So they really wanted to have an international standards ensuring equality of treatment between nationals and non-nationals. So they really wanted to give some guidelines for good governance across the migration cycle. So that's what's behind Convention 97. So in that moment, irregular migrations was not a specific concern of the states. They first wanted to have equality of treatment between migrant workers and national workers. That's why Article 6 of this convention highlights the question of equality of treatment for salary, taxation, access to social protection, access to trade unions. So the basic idea was to avoid any sort of discrimination and exploitation of migrants and equality of having equality of treatment between nationals and non-nationals. So historically speaking, the countries that promoted the adoption of these conventions are Italy and France, because there was a huge bulk of Italian workers in France. There were agreements between Italy, France, and Germany, but they really thought an international tool could ensure better governance and equality of treatment between nationals and non-nationals. So in a certain way, Convention 86 has got a template of labor migration contract, and that has been a beacon until very recently for bilateral agreements on migration for employment. So the question was to understand whether it was obsolete or to keep it, because its core questions are still usable today. So you'll see that there's a huge interest in ratifying it for many continents. But this convention is applied only for legal and regular migrants. Then we jump to 1975 with Convention 143 and Migrant Workers Convention. So these are supplementary provisions, but the context has changed dramatically. So we are living an economic downturn, and in particular, the oil crisis at international level. So this pushed the birth of clandestine or irregular migration waves, and with that, the exploitation of irregular migrants. So the aim of this convention was to respond to this need for protection of irregular migrants, victims of exploitation, in order to stop the exploitation of irregular migrants. So these are the elements that were put on the table when discussing about the adoption of this convention. And this has gone one step beyond inequality of treatment between migrants and nationals. So that was already present in countries of destination just for regular migrants. So Convention 143 is divided into two different parts, one concerning the protection of irregular migrants in order to fight abusive behaviors against irregular migrants, and in a second part, strengthening the rights of regular migrants through better access to a number of services, including family reunification, for example, or promotion and extension of the employment possibility for migrants and better access to freedom of association, and in particular for cultural association. So Convention 143 goes beyond equality of treatment. It speaks about equality of opportunities. So migrant workers should be entitled to the same opportunities as nationals. So when adopted, a state could ratify only Part 1 of Convention 143 at that time, or Part 2. So they could choose whether to ratify the whole convention or just one of the two parts. The idea was avoiding any exclusions of states which were less prone to ratify both parts. Today, we have realized that the countries that decided to ratify Convention 143 chose to ratify the whole convention and not just one part of it.
De partager ton écran.
Fernando, may you share your screen, maybe, so just to avoid this problem.
Entrer ici dans le mode de partage.
Merci.
Voilà.
La prochaine diapositive. Merci beaucoup.
Parfait. Parfait.
Right, that's perfect. Thanks, Fernando.
Voilà, celle-là. Parfait. Pour résumer, en fait,
So,
un petit peu les points saillants.
So, in a nutshell, the main points of the conventions, and in particular concerning Convention 97 and 143. Please remember that ratification of those two conventions has no impact on the prerogative of states to determine admission of non-nationals for employment. So, of course, the member states can choose whether to ratify or not the conventions. And during the discussions, we can see that when this is not done, this can open a space for exploitation. However, we try to highlight the importance of those conventions for both states of origin and destination. So we realize that taken together, they recognized many rights, and that can be crucial for the governments and states on both sides of the migration cycle. So we need to remember and insist on the protection of fundamental rights at work. So these conventions take and repeat and highlight the core elements from the core conventions of the ILO, but they go beyond and they give guidelines for governing labor migration. So that's why they are crucial. So once in the destination countries, migrant workers should be entitled to equal treatment because there are social consequences from labor migration. They should be entitled to justice, to family reunification, to housing and healthcare. And labor migration should be regular and should be managed through a right-based approach. Again, another key feature of this convention, these two conventions, is that they are supported and drafted and then approved through social dialogue. So not only these two, of course, but all ILO conventions. So here you can see the ratifications of these two conventions, and you can easily see that there's an imbalance between the number of ratifications of the two conventions. So Convention 97 was ratified by 50 countries, and I'm sorry for colleagues from Mauritius and Malawi. So we can see that a very low number of African countries ratified Convention 97 and 143. As for the former, many European countries ratified it. Yes, many of them ratified it for the reasons I have just mentioned. And you can see that it is not true that ratifications are mainly done by origin countries. There are also destination countries here, important both at regional and international level. So in Africa, you see Mauritius, for example. You also see Nigeria and Algeria that have become important destination countries over time. And looking at Americas and Caribbean, because Fernando is from Brazil, it is present here and ratified it. And then looking at Asia and Pacific, we have New Zealand. And New Zealand is another important country of destination. And as for Europe, you can see France, Germany, Italy, Spain, Portugal, the Netherlands. So they are among the most important destination countries in Europe. So this shows the presence of both origin and destination countries in the ratification lists. Of course, these two conventions make sense when they are ratified by both origin and destination countries. Unfortunately, as you can see, Convention 143 has a much lower number of ratifications. So you see that because of the promotion campaign of the ILO, it could increase the number of ratifications, which still stays rather low. And this is fundamental to protect the rights of irregular migrants. However, Convention 143 does not provide for the same rights to regular and irregular migrants. It just reminds of the entitlement to certain rights for all the workers because they are human rights. So I see the chat and I see questions for the French and Portuguese versions of my presentation. So the French version is already there on the platform, and the Portuguese version will be available starting from tomorrow. So I'd stop here, and I really encourage you to navigate the platform because in addition to this presentation, you'll see many more documents, videos, lectures to have a better insight and understanding on these two instruments. So thanks for your attention. If you have any questions, I may answer one or two. And Fernando, I see somebody asking the floor, maybe? Yes, Muyanga. We may start from that.
Muyanga, can you unmute yourself?
Sim, sim. Obrigado, bom dia, obrigado pela oportunidade. Eu fiz, sim, acho que a tradução está funcionando, não?
Sim, está funcionando, a gente pode te ouvir bem.
Okay. Eu fiz uma pergunta que era...
I would like to ask a question about the matter of migrant working as a policeman. But it happens, for instance, in Mozambique, that because we have a lot of foreigners working in Mozambique, and some of them work in the police force. And we and sometimes we don't have the whole number of workers. We don't know all of them, and we don't know exactly what they are doing. But it can happen also. They are working in the police force.
So Miriam, could you have the translation into French or English? Miriam? Yeah, no problem. Okay. I see. I see the question is connected to the possibility of having a clearer idea of the number of presence of migrants present in Mozambique. Well, it was more connected to labor inspections and to the possibility to assess the number of migrant workers. So labor inspectors should be in charge of checking the working conditions, not really checking whether there are regular or irregular migrants. All right, I say that again. The committee of experts for the application of conventions and recommendations said that many times. There is a collaboration between the Ministry of Labor, the Ministry of Internal Affairs, and the Labor Inspectorate, because labor inspectors may be accompanied by police officers or police forces in general whenever there are risks of exploitation or forced labor at a specific workplace. However, the very role of labor inspector is not this one, because they do not depend on the Ministry of Internal Affairs, they depend on the Ministry of Labor. So let's be mindful of the role of labor inspector. However, in full compliance with this role, the labor inspectors may run the risk of losing the trust of the workers, and this might be a problem. This is why it is so important for them not to play the role of a police officer, because this is not part of their mandate, and it's not the mandate of the Ministry of Labor.